The village, now a mere shadow of its former self, lay sprawled before me like a puzzle missing half its pieces. I had always been drawn to the unexplained, the stories that seemed too bizarre to be true. Whispering Wren was one such enigma. A tale that seemed to blend the lines between reality and myth. The war-torn village, with its abandoned homes and overgrown streets, was said to be the birthplace of this spectral entity. I arrived in the late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across the broken buildings. The village was eerily silent, the kind of silence that presses down on your ears, making you all too aware of your own heartbeat. I felt a chill, not from the cool air, but from the sense of being watched. I shrugged off the feeling, attributing it to the natural anxiety of being in a place so steeped in sorrow. My first task was to get a lay of the land. The village, though small, was a labyrinth of crumbling structures and winding streets. I walked through what must have been the main square, now overrun with weeds, the fountain in the center dry and cracked. The houses that lined the streets were empty shells, their windows like dark unblinking eyes. I could see why the legend of Whispering Wren had taken root here. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of lingering dread, a remnant of the horrors this village had witnessed. It was as if the very air was saturated with the memories of conflict and loss. I found a relatively intact building to set up my temporary base. As I unpacked my equipment, a part of me couldn't help but feel excited. Whispering Wren was more than just a ghost story, it was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Little did I know, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, that I was about to come face to face with the very subject of my investigation. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting as I wandered through the deserted streets, my recorder in hand. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. It was then I heard it for the first time, a whisper. Not just any whisper, but one that seemed to slither into my ears, cold and sinister. I spun around, my heart racing, but there was no one there. I tried to rationalize it as the wind playing tricks, but deep down, I knew it was something else. That's when I saw them two glowing, ember-like eyes peering at me from the shadows of a broken doorway. My breath caught in my throat. The figure was shrouded in tattered Ashen robes, its face obscured. The only thing visible were those haunting eyes and elongated talon-like fingers that seemed to beckon me closer. I stood frozen, my rational mind struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure vanished into the shadows. I was left standing there, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind reeling. Had I just seen Whispering Wren? I hurried back to my makeshift base, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. I needed to know more about this entity. The villagers' accounts, the whispers in the night, the glowing eyes, they were no longer just elements of a story. They were real, and I had just come face to face with them. That night, I barely slept. Every creak and rustle jolted me awake, my eyes searching the darkness for those glowing embers. But they didn't appear again. As dawn approached, I made a decision. I would delve deeper into the village's past, into the legend of Whispering Wren. I needed to understand what this entity was, why it haunted these ruins, and what it wanted. Little did I know, my search for answers would lead me down a path far darker than I could have imagined. The next day, I started my investigation in earnest. The village, bathed in morning light, seemed less menacing, but the memory of the previous night lingered. I began by visiting the nearby towns, speaking to those who had once called the village home. Their stories painted a picture of a community shattered by conflict, a place where fear and sorrow had taken root. Each person I spoke to had their own tale about Whispering Wren. Some remembered it as a shadow flitting in the periphery of their vision, others recalled the paralyzing whispers that echoed in the night. But there was a common thread: each story was incomplete, fragmented. It was as if their encounters with the entity had left gaps in their memories. I returned to the village as the sun began its descent, armed with a tape recorder and a camera. I was determined to document any encounter with Whispering Wren. As I explored the derelict buildings, the whispers returned. They were clearer now, a cacophony of voices that seemed to be speaking directly into my mind. My hands trembled as I tried to record them, but when I played back the tape, there was only silence. That night, as I settled in the building I'd chosen as my base, the encounters grew more intense. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and the temperature would drop suddenly, leaving me shivering. Each time I tried to capture these phenomena on camera, they would cease, as if the entity was aware of my attempts to document it. The most harrowing encounter came that night. I awoke to find the figure of Whispering Wren at the foot of my bed, its ember-like eyes boring into mine. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The room filled with whispers, each one echoing the sorrows and fears of the villagers. It felt as if Whispering Wren was trying to communicate, to share the collective trauma it was born from. The experience left me shaken. I began to feel a strange connection to the village, as if its history was seeping into my bones. As the days passed, my sense of reality began to warp. Time seemed fluid in the village, with night and day merging into one continuous loop of exploration and encounters. I was determined to uncover the truth about Whispering Wren, but the more I delved into the mystery, the more I felt myself losing grip on what was real. My obsession with Whispering Wren had reached its zenith. The entity's presence was almost constant now, its whispers a never-ending soundtrack in my mind. I knew I was close to unraveling the truth, but the cost was my own sanity. It was on the 7th night, under a moonless sky, that I decided to confront the entity. I ventured to the heart of the village, where the ruins were densest, a place that felt like the epicenter of the haunting. There, in the shadow of a crumbling church, Whispering Wren appeared. His form was more defined than ever, the tattered robes flowing like mist, the elongated fingers twitching with anticipation. The glowing eyes fixed on me, and for a moment, I felt a connection, an understanding. I demanded answers, shouting into the night, asking what it wanted, why it haunted this place, why it tormented me. The entity responded not in words but in a flood of memories. I was inundated with visions of the village's past, the conflict, the pain, the fear. I saw the birth of Whispering Wren from the collective dread of the villagers, a spectral manifestation of their trauma. But then, the visions turned personal. I was no longer an observer but a participant. I felt the fear of the villagers as if it were my own, their despair suffocating me. It was as if Whispering Wren was forcing me to experience the agony that had given it life. The climax of this nightmarish revelation came when I saw myself through the eyes of the villagers, a harbinger of the past, stirring up long-buried fears. I realized then that Whispering Wren was not just haunting the village, it was the village, an amalgamation of all the sorrow and horror it had witnessed. I staggered under the weight of this revelation, my mind teetering on the brink of madness. The entity advanced, its whispers growing louder, more insistent. I was on the verge of succumbing to the terror when the first light of dawn broke the horizon. The sunlight weakened Whispering Wren, causing its form to flicker and wane. I seized the moment, breaking free from the paralysis and fleeing from the church. As I ran, the whispers faded, but their echoes remained. I had come face to face with the heart of the village's darkness and survive. But the experience had changed me, leaving scars that I knew would never fully heal. As I stumbled away from the church, I made my way back to my base, the village now basking in the gentle morning light, a stark contrast to the horrors of the night. As I packed my belongings, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Whispering Wren had shown me the depths of human fear and despair, and I felt a weight of responsibility to share this truth with the world. The journey back to civilization was a blur. I was physically moving away from the village, but a part of me remained there, caught in the web of Whispering Wren's whispers. The sunlit streets of the nearby town felt alien, too normal after what I had experienced. Back in the safety of my own home, I tried to make sense of my experiences. The recordings I had made were mostly static, but here and there, I could hear faint traces of the whispers. The photos showed only the decaying village, with no sign of the entity. I struggled with the decision of what to do with my findings. How could I explain the unexplainable? Would anyone believe my account of Whispering Wren, or would it be dismissed as the ramblings of a mind pushed to the brink? As days turned into weeks, I found it increasingly difficult to separate myself from the experience. My sleep was plagued with nightmares of the village, and the haunting figure of Whispering Wren. I started to doubt what was real and what was a product. I realized that Whispering Wren had left its mark on me. I was no longer just a journalist, I was a survivor of something beyond the realm of normal understanding. The story I had set out to tell had become my own, a testament to the thin veil between reality and the supernatural. In the weeks that followed, I found myself in a state of perpetual restlessness. The experience with Whispering Wren had fundamentally altered my perception of reality. The boundaries between the village's tragic past and my present were blurred, leaving me in a limbo of confusion and paranoia. I spent long hours documenting my experiences, meticulously detailing every encounter with the entity. But as I wrote, I grappled with the fear that these words might not convey the true horror of what I had faced. How could mere words capture the essence of an entity born from collective trauma, a specter that blurred the lines between memory and reality? Despite my reservations, I knew I had to share my story. The world needed to know about Whispering Wren, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder of the deep scars left by conflict and sorrow. I published my account, laying bare the haunting experiences and the unsettling revelations uncovered in the abandoned village. The reaction was mixed. Some readers were captivated, finding in my account a chilling testament to the power of collective memory and the supernatural. Others dismissed it as an elaborate fiction, a tale spun by an overactive imagination. But among the feedback, there were a few who shared similar experiences, whispers of entities and hauntings that resonated with the legend of Whispering Wren. As time passed, the intensity of my experiences began to fade, but they never completely left me. I would often catch myself listening for whispers in the quiet, or seeing flickers of movement in the shadows. The village and its spectral inhabitant had become a part of me, a chapter in my life that would never be fully closed. The story of Whispering Wren remained alive, its whispers echoing in the minds of those who had heard its tale. It became a symbol of the unseen scars left by trauma, a haunting reminder of the past's persistent grip on the present. In the end, I was left with a profound sense of ambiguity. Had my encounter with Whispering Wren been real, or had it been a manifestation of my own subconscious fears? The truth, much like the entity itself, remained shrouded in mystery, a puzzle that continued to whisper its secrets, just beyond the reach of understanding.